The Andy Pollin Show.
We got to go after this with everything we got, figuring they're going to come with everything they got.
I'll start off by saying I'm bored, I'm broke, and I'm back.
The Andy Pollin Show on ESPN 630 starts right now.
Last chance for number 5 if he's going to start on Sunday. Dan Quinn has said that he needs to see Jayden Daniels on the practice field before he puts him out on the stadium field on Sunday against the Raiders, and this is the last day of practice. Daniels has not practiced the last 2 days, so it's looking more and more like Marcus Mariota, and we will get into that. Also, Dominique Foxworth was on Dan Patrick yesterday and talked about the spying thing and how NFL teams are so worried about a little bit of information getting out, which brought back memories for me of the George Allen days. He was the original spy versus spy in the NFL, and I'll tell a couple of stories about that coming up. Do want to get into the situation at quarterback and what is likely to happen on Sunday. I would alert you, though, to a very good piece that was done at SI.com by Connor Orr. Connor Orr, longtime writer for Sports Illustrated, and he did a profile of Jayden Daniels, but it's not just Jayden, it's the relationship with the mom, which is really, really interesting. It also comes with an accompanying video. They went back to Jayden Daniels' high school field, and I remember talking to Jeff George back in 2000. Now, Jeff George had a 10-cent head, but he had a $1 million arm. I mean, it was beautiful to watch him warm up that preseason. I remember that he would stand next to Brad Johnson and throw passes down the field, and Brad had a pretty good NFL arm, but man, the Jeff George arm was something to behold. Problem was, that's all he wanted to do was chuck it down the field, and his career kind of blew up. But he was once the number one pick of the draft by the Indianapolis Colts, and they traded up to get him. But wherever he went, there were problems, and it finally ended for him here after a Monday night game against Green Bay, which they lost, I believe, 38-0. And he didn't throw a pass like more than 20 yards. And it was, clearly a passive-aggressive move. And 2 days later, Marty Schottenheimer didn't bench him. He cut him. He just cut him loose. He got a couple of looks on other teams, but never made it back to an NFL game before his career ended. But anyway, the headline on the story is Jayden Daniels is making Commanders football fun again and doing it his own way. And he's got a really good quote from him at the beginning of the story. He said, "I would say the concept of power is more so just being able to control your own narrative and being able to do what you want and control your own story." And I think we've seen that in the year plus that he's been here. He's done a really good job with this. But you've also heard about or probably seen from time to time his mom, Regina Jackson, who has been certified as an agent, and she's actually put together her own company. She's got 10 clients that are mostly college guys who will go into the NFL at some point, or at least they hope to. So she's helping them with the NIL spillover. She's also working with an agent. So it's not like she's the only agent for Jayden Daniels. Not that he needs one for 2 more years, but once they start negotiating a contract extension after 2 more seasons, it's going to get into some really serious money. And his agent is Ron Butler, but Regina Jackson has become certified. And you may remember this. Lamar Jackson negotiated his own extension in Baltimore. And you heard about his mom. Well, his mom was just an advisor. She couldn't talk to Eric DeCosta, the general manager of the Ravens. She was not certified to do that. Regina Jackson has become, they believe, the first mom to do that. And so that's going to be really fun to watch. Well, not so much fun for Josh Harris's checkbook, but how this all plays out once they start to negotiate these deals. Regina Jackson, she has a degree in business administration and 2 masters, one in public health administration and one in entrepreneurship. She has qualified herself for this. This isn't just mom sitting across the negotiating table. And I've said this before, I've had an agent in my career, and one of the main purposes of the agent is so that he or she can listen to management trash you and still sort through all that and get you the best deal possible. Also, this paragraph about Regina Jackson from Connor Orr in the SI story. Jackson has opinions, but she wants to make one thing clear, especially after being so visible in Jayden's journey through the perilous world of NIL and now his NFL career. Quote, I don't want the spotlight, she says. I hate it, to be honest with you, but I know that's what comes with it, and there is some good that I can share there to get my story out because I want to influence women, and not just women, but mothers and fathers, and maybe thought that they could do it and maybe don't want to, meaning that, they thought about becoming an agent but don't want to do it. But we still have to be those instillers of life lessons in these kids. And whatever she's done to produce this football player and this person, she's done one hell of a job. His father, too. I believe they're divorced. But the father was a college football player, and the discipline, the life lessons that they've taught, at least from what we've been able to observe here, have been fantastic. Now, this is interesting. I mentioned that Jeff George. I got kind of sidetracked here, but Jeff George in training camp in 2000 told Zabe and me that he believed he once threw the ball 88 yards, and I believe it. I mean, he could throw the football. You see in this video, Jayden Daniels get it 77 yards in the air. That's probably enough. You're not going to throw many 77-yard passes. So watch the video, read the story. I think there's some real interesting nuggets. It's, again, by Connor Orr, SI.com. Jayden Daniels is making Commanders football fun again and doing it his own way. All right, who's going to do it on Sunday? It looks like it's Marcus Mariota, and if it is, offensive coordinator Kliff Kingsbury is A-OK with it.
When we signed him back, we felt like we have two starters in the building, which is rare in this league. So anytime he was asked to play or practice or even on scout team, he's been phenomenal. So he treats it like a pro, as a leader on the team, despite not being the starter, which is hard to do, and can't say enough good things about him. So if he has to go, I'm sure he'll be ready. Can you provide any update on where Jayden is today? No, he's just preparing mentally. Marcus is getting the reps physically. Jayden preparing mentally, and we'll take it from there.
Yeah, I would think that they're going to play it as safe as possible. If there's any doubt about the knee, he's not playing on Sunday. Kingsbury, not exactly a yuckster, not like Jay Gruden, who used to like to yuck it up. But he did unleash kind of a funny in talking about his quarterback room. Just truly good guys that like each other. Like across the board, I would let anybody in that room marry my hypothetical daughter except Hartman because he's way too good looking. But just phenomenal people above all else, hard workers, professionals, and they're truly like a joy to be around every day. Yeah, you might worry about Sam Hartman dating your daughter. I'd be more worried about Marcus Mariota, who's married with kids, but that's just me. Defense, Joe Whitt, defensive coordinator, talked yesterday. And by the way, because of the short week last week where they played on Thursday night, we didn't hear from the coordinators. So Joe Whitt has seen some good and he's seen some bad in the first two games, and he recapped it in yesterday's news conference.
New York, I thought, we came out and played the way that we should. The defensive line played really well, highlighting Kinlaw. He was violent all over the place. We knew that Russell had the ability, as you saw this last game, to shoot the ball vertically. And I thought secondary did a nice job of now allowing the balls to get over the top. And the D-line did a nice job of pressuring. All right, going to the Green Bay game, we knew that misdirection and eye discipline was a must. We did not do a good job in the eye discipline category. And that allowed, some big plays. The tight end hit the big play up the seam. New York ran the exact same, a similar concept. They ran it slightly different. Covered the New York game, and this game we didn't. Eyes weren't as true. They had some insert boots that were ran pretty well, and but once again, our eye discipline wasn't there. I thought the hitting and the running was still there that game, but when points were going to be at a premium and the score is 17-10 in the fourth quarter, we got to make sure that we find the way to get that thing done.
I have listened to thousands of football coach news conferences, Hall of Famers, Bill Parcells, Joe Gibbs, Tom Landry. I have never heard eye discipline before. Maybe that's a new one. Maybe that's a term that Whitt uses, but he was very forceful about that yesterday. He talked for, 12, 13 minutes, and at one point somebody was trying to get an explanation about it, and he got a little chesty, like, hey, I'm just trying to explain to you. We didn't win because of eye discipline. Okay, I assume that means, hit what you see. I don't know, but it's a football term that I'm not familiar with. I've heard of, odd ones like squatting on the route and things like that. But, eye discipline was really what bothered him most about the performance against Green Bay. As far as getting past the Green Bay game and moving forward and putting that in the rearview mirror, here's what he said about that.
We do our due diligence with the Green Bay, looking at what happened, because people are going to be, copying some of the things that happened from that standpoint. But you can't let one game beat you twice, so you flush it from that standpoint. The thing that's hard is, you want to get right back, because the only thing that gets this taste out of your mouth is a win. And so to be able to have to sit on this all weekend and then to come in a whole nother week and it's 10 days before you can go to another game, that's difficult, because when you don't play as a team the way that you expected to play and against a really good team, and it doesn't sit with you well. And so you want to go back, be able to get back out there and show that, hey, this is the type of team that we are, and what we put out Thursday, we're more like what we put out last week against New York. But we have to show it. We can't talk about anything else. We got to go show it. So that's what we're itching to do.
Eye discipline is what they're looking for when they get out on the field against the Raiders on Sunday. The line, if you've been following this, they opened as 6.5-point favorites on Friday morning. That was before the Raiders played last weekend. Didn't look very good either. And that loss to the Chargers on Monday night. So they opened up at 6.5. It's now down to 3.5, and I got to believe a lot of that is Mariota, who has played well. Last year, completing 34 or 44 passes, 364 yards, no interceptions. Remember, he pulled up. Yeah, he really went most of the game against Carolina, and then they played in the second half in the last regular season game of the year in Dallas and wound up leading the game-winning drive where he hit Terry McLaurin for the winning touchdown pass. So if they need him to play, he's probably going to play pretty well, and I would think that they can beat the Raiders. And again, you're looking at 14 more games after this. So this is game number 3. And if you look around the league, there's a lot of quarterbacks down. There are a lot of quarterbacks who are not going to play this week, maybe as many as 5 if Daniels doesn't go. And one of the things that's been a little bit curious, it's still early in the process, but Kirk Cousins is the backup quarterback in Atlanta. And Michael Penix has looked really good in the first couple of games for the Falcons. There's a lot of money that's guaranteed for Cousins this year, $27.5 million. That's a lot of money for a backup quarterback. So if a team is looking, particularly like Cincinnati, which is going to play most of the season without Joe Burrow, you might think, would they be willing to take on at least the bulk of that salary? And would Atlanta be willing to make a deal like that? I think they would. They would like to offload the salary. But on the other hand, they're not going to take on the salary and trade him away. So this is Ian Rappaport of the NFL Network talking to Judy Batista about the Kirk Cousins situation with all these quarterbacks out.
First, the facts part of it. It does not seem like anyone has called the Falcons trying to trade for Kirk Cousins thus far in the season. It is early, but we have had a significant quarterback injury, Joe Burrow, obviously, so worth noting that the Bengals have not called anyone for possibly trading for a veteran quarterback. But there is a good reason for that, Judy. And to me, the good reason is that Kirk Cousins has incredible value. I know it's $100 million, and I know the Falcons are going to pay all of that. But really, he is a proven starting quarterback who happens to be the backup quarterback. And if Michael Penix gets hurt, Cousins will step in there. That allows the Falcons to drive a very, very hard bargain. In other words, if you are going to trade for Kirk Cousins, if you're a team who says, all right, we got to have this guy, you're going to have to pay some of the salary, and you're going to have to give a real draft pick. That is the luxury the Falcons have, because if they got to keep him, they can just keep him because he is an excellent, excellent backup quarterback. Perhaps that is why we have not seen a deal yet, but every time there is a real long-term quarterback injury, we're going to have the same conversation this season, Judy.
And I think what teams are looking at, too, is how well can they play with their backup quarterback before they would have to make a move like getting Kirk Cousins. Also, there may be a feeling around the league he's done. I mean, he did not play well last year. Some think maybe it's because he was coming off the torn Achilles. And the same thing with Aaron Rodgers. It takes you a year to get back from that. He's a little younger than Rodgers. That may be of value, but he's not Aaron Rodgers. He's not going to the Hall of Fame. He's a really good quarterback when he's playing well. And at this point, maybe he's an over-the-hill quarterback who's figured out how to make more money, more guaranteed money than anybody. Once this year is up, I believe he will have made more money than Tom Brady, who played 23 years of the NFL and won 7 Super Bowls. Just the way it is. By the way, on the tush push, and I was among those, and I heard others say this, that Sunday may have been the tipping point on that. The national TV game, Super Bowl rematch, Tom Brady doing the game, did a good job of pointing out that the 2 guards for Philadelphia were clearly getting false starts on these tush-push plays. They ran it, 7 times, 6 times, and they got 4 first downs, and they scored a touchdown on it. It was effective. So there's been a lot of talk about the tush-push this week, and Mark Maskey of the Washington Post reported that the officials are now being told, hey, you got to look at this thing really closely. You got to look at this play tightly. The NFL showed the Eagles running the quarterback sneak on 3rd and short late in the 4th quarter for a first down in an eventual 20-17 win in Kansas City to the officials. And this is what the NFL Vice President of Officiating Training and Development, Ramon George, said to the Post. Anytime we have this situation, we're in short yardage, we know we want to make sure that we officiate these plays. The offensive team has to be perfect in every aspect. We want to officiate it tight. We want to be black and white and as tight as we can when we get into this situation where teams are in the bunch position and we have to officiate them being onsides and movement early. I heard Ross Tucker say this. We played this yesterday. And he believes, and I believe this as well, this is the last year. This was the tipping point. And Dean Blandino, who was also on with Dan Patrick a couple of days ago, said he believes that the reason that the play stayed, because it did look like they had enough support to get rid of it. It was pretty close. He believes the reason it stayed was a lot of owners didn't want to feel like they were having sour grapes over this, that because the Eagles won the Super Bowl, they didn't want to be seen as oh, hey, they cheated. So there may be something to that. One thing about the Eagles, they know how to run it. They've converted 96.6% of the time that they have run the tush push in 4th and 1 since 2022. That's a big sample size. That's 4 seasons. 4 seasons, 96.6% when they run the tush push. Dominique Foxworth on Dan Patrick's show yesterday about the 007 aspect of Tom Brady being an owner and being able to participate in these Zoom meetings that he has with teams as he gets ready to broadcast games. We'll get to that and more as we continue. It's the Andy Pollin Show, ESPN 630.
The Andy Pollin Show on ESPN 630, the sports capital.
So when it came to stretching the boundaries of the rules, Redskins Hall of Fame coach George Allen stretched as far as anyone has ever stretched. He knew about spying. Oh, yeah. He was. I'll get to that in a second. But at training camp, he had employed a former FBI agent, a retired FBI agent named Ed Boynton. And Ed Boynton's job was to ride his bicycle around the practice field while the team was practicing to look for spies from other teams. That was his responsibility. And George was very conscious of this because, well, George knew about spying himself. And when I worked in Dallas in the early 80s, this is before they moved their practice facility to Valley Ranch, they were practicing on a field that was next to a hotel. So one side of the hotel overlooked the practice field. And 1 week a year, the Cowboys would buy out all the rooms on one side of the hotel. And that was the week that they played the Redskins because they knew that George was going to put a scout in one of those rooms And his job was to watch what was happening on the practice field and report back. They didn't have cell phone cameras then. Maybe you would have been too conspicuous actually filming it. But the scout would be finding out what was going on. So the Cowboys knew in order to combat that, they had to make sure that every room on that side that overlooked the practice field had to be taken. It was, they knew about George. And, George Allen, who once traded a draft pick that he didn't own. The league fined him $10,000 and they moved on. It was a different time. But he was good at it. And he was a good coach. He didn't win the Super Bowl, but he got them to their first one in his second year, and they made the playoffs, I believe, 5 out of the 7 years that he coached here. And he's in the Hall of Fame. Never won the big one, but chased it harder than everybody else and looked for every single edge conceivable. So now we got this big Tom Brady flap that, Tom Brady was seen in the coach's booth on Monday night as he was seemingly working with the Raiders coaches and calling the game. And that's okay, says the NFL, but he's also privy to inside information because he participates in those production meetings as they get ready to broadcast games. So, for example, he's doing the Bears and the Cowboys this week. Well, what do you know? His Raiders, the team he's part owner of, they play the Bears next week after they play the Commanders here. You don't think he's going to find out some information that other owners don't have? Right now, the league is like, no big deal. And some think it's no big deal, but others do. This is Dominique Foxworth, who played 7 years in the NFL, former cornerback at the University of Maryland, excellent player, and now I think an excellent analyst with ESPN. He was with Dan Patrick yesterday explaining how the spy versus spy works.
When you are in that locker room, you're paranoid. Everybody's paranoid. I've watched coaches burn game plans, like literally burn game plans. They send advanced scouts to where we're going to practice and sweep our meeting rooms. Like we're going to a away game. Someone has gone to the hotel and swept the meeting rooms to make sure there are no bugs in there. Like this, we're crazy people. So Tom Brady getting a little extra information, I'm sure, is driving a lot of these teams nuts.
Okay, wait a minute. Give me for instance, what city would you go to where you worried about?
Oh, New England.
Of course.
Yeah. I mean, we'd worry about it in New England. And I always thought, like, if you guys are that worried, you must know something because the stories of the New England cheating were like later in my career, but the fear was always there. So like there was always something going on. We had that problem. And I've heard stories of people leaving out stuff like the counterintelligence where you leave out something that's actually the opposite of what you're doing to try to catch the other team. I had in college, we played West Virginia and we we took a couple of their players. And I remember leading up to the week of games, Coach Friedgen kept telling the media that West Virginia was like cracking our codes for our plays and stuff. And I just realized that the reason why he was telling them that is because we were trying to do that to them. And so I always assume the most paranoid people are also the people that are up to something.
Absolutely. Good old Ralph playing the espionage game. He won 10 games his first 3 years. Great coach. 7 bowl games. Really a fine job that he did at Maryland. Too bad they chased him out for that idiot Randy Edsall. More from Dominique Foxworth. This is his analysis of what's going on with the Chicago Bears, and they're starting to worry. Caleb Williams is not living up to being the number one pick of the draft. They got Ben Johnson as the new coach, and as Dan is pointing out here to Dominique Foxworth, that's not off to a great start either.
Ben Johnson called out his team, and he talked about lack of effort. As a former player, like that's a real indictment. And here we are 2 games into the season. So I don't know how you took that, but that's not one of those we got to fix our mistakes. Now I'm questioning your effort in Chicago, Dominic.
And publicly.
Yes.
That's the part.
Yes.
We have normally something like that week 2. If we got an effort issue in week 2, that's an inside the house conversation. Him doing it publicly is very strategic. I think there are some coaches who aren't strategic and they say things to the media willy-nilly, but it seems to me that Ben Johnson is doing this for a reason. And it's a long season, so you have to find different ways to motivate your team and get their attention. It's a little concerning if week 2 it's about effort, but it was a ugly performance in that game. So I understand him trying to light a fire.
And it feels like everybody wants to jump off the Chicago bandwagon after 2 games with the new coach. And Caleb Williams, I don't think has been the issue. I mean, the defense against Detroit was terrible, but What do you see as a former player?
I asked this question of myself, and it helped me kind of reframe the way I was thinking about Caleb Williams is, if this was his rookie year, how would I think about his first 2 games? Because things were such a mess last year, I want to throw that year out. And I know we can't. It's coloring the way that I'm watching him. And if, like that Tyler Dunn piece, if I hadn't read that, how would I feel about the way that he is playing right now? And I would feel a lot better if these were his first 2 games in the league. He's had a couple accuracy issues, and he wasn't perfect, but he showed the magic promise that got him drafted so high. And I would convince myself, he'll clean some of this other stuff up. It was like nerves and new offense and whatever. But the problem is we have last year to draw on, and we have a lot of stories coming out of Chicago that aren't very favorable to Caleb Williams. And that stuff it's in the back of my head. Even when he throws those majestic passes and rolls out and throws a crazy dart downfield, I'm still in the back of my head But last year was a mess. And it seems like a lot of your teammates don't really love you the way that I would want my franchise quarterback to be loved.
I hate when I see these quarterbacks in the NFL play like they were in college. They're going to extend a play. They rarely step up in the pocket. I mean, and you have to.
Yeah.
And I'm sure that you're like, oh, my God, I really have to trust my lineman here. But I got to step up in the pocket. And these young guys don't step up in the pocket. You're a former defensive back. Is the goal to get these guys to scramble or try to keep them in the pocket?
I think it's a game plan situation because some quarterbacks throw really well outside of pocket, and you'd be surprised. Some of the most athletic quarterbacks aren't really accurate on the run. And then there's some that go to a certain side and are better that way, and you're trying to force them that way. So I think it's a game plan by game plan situation. But generally, I think we all have recognized that the quarterback position has gotten a lot more athletic than it was historically. And I think that's probably a result of us changing the rules to protect the quarterback. The more we protected the quarterback, the less important it was to get rid of the ball, to be in the pocket and make quick decisions, and also be big. You were gonna get lit up. I know when I was growing up in the 90s watching football, quarterbacks were getting their chest dove through on a regular basis, and blindside hit and the late hit rules were different. So it was much more important. You would never consider Kyler Murray or Bryce Young, anybody like that, as a quarterback. And those things, I think, have led to a change in the way, in the style that quarterbacks play. And then, of course, Mahomes blew that all up because once he kind of took the Aaron Rodgers thing to the next level of creating out of structure, and now that's all we're looking for. And you could tie it back to the question you asked about Caleb. That's how he got the #1 pick, was all those freaky plays that he was making in college, and we all were like, he can overcome the coaching.
Yeah, I don't know.
I'm not saying it's right. I'm just saying that's how I think we got there.
But it's a hard thing to break, a hard habit to break when pressure happens. Tebow did this when he got to the NFL. You're in Florida, you can do that. In the NFL, you can't. Somebody's going to find you. They're going to track you down.
I think it's a hard habit to break, but I don't think they want to break the habit. I don't think their coaches want them to break the habit. I think what they want them to do is something that Josh Allen and Lamar Jackson and Patrick Mahomes, of course, the best quarterbacks, have been able to do, is understand when it's time to do that and when it's not. So the type of players that they love, the coaches want that type of player, because no matter how poorly you've coached this game, how figured out your offense is, Joe Burrow, a healthy Joe Burrow, can buy enough time to make you right, and then you look like a better coach. The problem is if you have more of those negative plays than positive plays, and it's something that should be an addition, like a bonus to the way that you run. And I think it's become core to so many players. And I think Cameron Ward in Tennessee is another example of that, where a lot of his success in college was a result of him creating. And he's going to learn in the NFL that can't be all the time.
That's Dominique Foxworth, played at Maryland, played for the Ravens, played for the Denver Broncos, now an analyst with ESPN, kind of picking apart the whole Bears mess and whether they can get that right. Boy, if they have whiffed on another quarterback, this is a generational quarterback, Caleb Williams. And I don't think they really whiffed, because he has shown signs that he can be good. But the team isn't good right now. The coach that was going to change their fortunes isn't off to a great start doing that. And you look down here, and it looks like they got the right coach and the right quarterback, both of whom were second choices. Now, I believe all along they wanted Jayden Daniels. There's even been reports that if somehow Daniels had wound up in Chicago, they were going to take J.J. McCarthy at number 2 and not take Caleb Williams. But looks like everything has worked out very, very nicely here and not so much in Chicago. Not working out early, and it's early. I think all this, talk about how few 0-2 teams make the playoffs, and no 0-3 team has made the playoffs since they expanded it to 14 teams. But you got to believe, at least I got to believe, that the Kansas City Chiefs are going to get it right. Chase Daniel, now an analyst with ESPN, watches a lot of tape, played 14 years in the NFL, was taken as an undrafted free agent by the Redskins. They cut him loose. He winds up going to New Orleans, third-string quarterback there, wins the Super Bowl, and then just bounces around the league. He's with all different teams and only started 4 games during a 14-year career, but learned a lot in the tape room and learned a lot from other quarterbacks, and now is putting that to use as an analyst. This is his look at what Kansas City is now as an 0-2 team.
0-2, right? First time since 2014, and I was actually on that team, and we didn't end up making the playoffs. The thing with the Chiefs this year, where I think they have struggled to get a little bit better, is obviously like they haven't had their receivers, right? They haven't had Rashee Rice, Hollywood Brown, or Xavier Worthy in 2 years on the field at the same time. That is a completely different receiver core than they've had to do. Obviously, with Travis Kelce getting older, he's not as much of a factor as he can. I thought the offensive line really is still the issue, specifically left guard and Kingsley Sumatia. He's just not playing at a high level, especially against Philly. And when you look at their offense, they wanted to be a throw it down the field offense. That sort of escaped them from their offensive game plans really the last 2 or 3 years without Tyreek. They wanted to do that this year. They've had to make adjustments and change the way they've played the game, and it's been Patrick Mahomes running the football. I don't want him leading the league and rushing the football for quarterbacks. That's not what he does, right? But he's had to do that. And I look at their schedule, and I'm glad you brought that up. If they can be 3-3 after the Ravens and Lions, I think it's the Lions, the last one. If they can just get to 3-3, and they did this a couple years ago, where they get into a rhythm, they find out who they are offensively, they get all their guys back. I think that the Chiefs can still be the Chiefs. Like, I just think it's way too early to write them off. And I know all these people are like, 0-2, it's impossible to make like a 12% chance to make the playoffs. I just think like their defense is still really good. And if they can get some wins against some quality opponents and just get to 500 through 6 games, then I mean, look, the 1 seed might be out the table if they do that, right? But as long as they get into the tournament, man, it's the Chiefs are the Chiefs for me.
That's Chase Daniel. Now, the game that's against the Ravens, that's going to be an advantage for them because Baltimore's playing on a short week. They're playing Monday night at home against Detroit, which is going to be a tough game. And then they got to go to Kansas City. And so that could be really pivotal for both teams. The Ravens, having blown it against Buffalo in the opener, blowing that 15-point lead in the fourth quarter, and a tough game against Detroit this week. So that's just going to be huge when the Ravens go to Kansas City after playing Detroit on Monday night. And we've got Ravens preview coming up at 10:30, so we'll take a closer look at the matchup against the Lions coming up then. Up next, more on the Commanders and the quarterback situation for tomorrow, and also Ravens preview. It's the Andy Pollard Show, ESPN 630. All right, Ravens with a big one on Monday night against the Detroit Lions. We'll do Ravens preview as we always do on Friday at 10:30. In the meantime, Kliff Kingsbury on what they are going to be missing with Austin Ekeler out for the rest of the year. Also, Zach Ertz was on a podcast that is now being done by Deebo Samuel. And Deebo Samuel is close to putting himself in company with 2 Redskins Hall of Famers. And they would be the only 3 to get to that number. Very interesting statistical thing that is approaching for Deebo Samuel. We'll get to that and a whole lot more as we roll towards the weekend. It's Friday. How about that? Friday again. So Commanders move on, and among the things that were very helpful for them last year on their way to 12 wins and getting to the NFC Championship game, pretty good health. They They had Jayden Daniels make all 17 starts. Even a guy like Austin Ekeler, he missed a time twice, once with a concussion, maybe twice with concussions, but he did make it back this year and was playing well, and unfortunately tore his Achilles on Thursday night, last Thursday night against the Green Bay Packers, so he's going to be out for the rest of the year. Bill Croxy Merritt is going to take up the slack on that, the rookie running back, 7th-round pick who's been a surprise. But this was Kliff Kingsbury yesterday, asked what they're going to be missing with Ekeler out.
Just the run after catch stuff and the ability to make people miss in space. We were able to set up some plays and do different things to get him touches that the first guy never tackled him. And that is kind of the hidden yards. You can take some stuff off the quarterback with a guy who can get you those type of yards. So that will be missed.
And then with Krosky Merritt, if he's obviously going to get more touches or time or whatever, what's the challenge for him? What are some things that you're going to need to see out of him if he's in that role?
Yeah, just continue to progress. In I would say playing without the ball. I think every time he's touched it, good things happen. It's just as a young player, there's a lot of things you haven't seen, whether it's pass pro, leading for somebody else, running the proper route technique, things of that nature. So he just got to keep coming. But I've been really impressed by his work ethic and staying on top of it, and he's definitely improved each week.
Yeah, he's only played 2 games in the NFL, but what Kingsbury is telling you there, okay, we can give him the ball, but the other things that go along with playing the position, like pass protection, running routes, things like that, that's kind of a work in progress, which you'd expect. I mean, it's a 7th-round pick. He went to Arizona last year. You may be familiar with the story. Played 1 game, and then they looked at his eligibility, and they said, oh, no, you've used it up. So rather than go someplace and train, he stayed with the team, stayed with Arizona and was on the scout team, and showed enough at the Arizona Pro Day that they took him in the 7th round. It looks like he's a great pickup. But, again, you got a veteran guy like Ekeler. He's 31 years old. He played a long time with the Chargers, now in his 2nd year here, knows the system, et cetera, and you lose a lot when he's out. So what Kingsbury's saying is Bill Croxy Merritt, has got to pick things up quickly, but he likes his work ethic and he likes his ability to be able to do that. As far as what he's seen from the offense so far,
yeah, I just say a work in progress. I thought, the Giants game showed some promises, weren't very precise in some areas, and then as far as Green Bay went, first off, you got to give them a lot of credit. I think that defensive staff does a tremendous job there. They have a really good defense, a talented defense, and they got after us. Any opportunities we had, we didn't seem to make the most of. But it's week 2. Got to keep getting better. Got to keep learning together. We haven't been together that much as a complete unit, getting on the same page. And so it was good to get back this week and actually practice and get out there and try to build. But yeah, I just think we're a work in progress right now.
Yeah, work in progress, which is not really what you want to be in your 2nd year, but, it's a long season, and you still have 15 games left to play. If you missed this, Preston Smith is back, 2nd-round pick in 2015, went to Green Bay, played well for them, had 44 sacks, got traded to Pittsburgh in the middle of last season. They did not re-sign him, and he was available on the street for pass rushing here. And as far as what Joe Whitt, the defensive coordinator, can expect out of him early on,
we're still seeing. Preston's very new to the group, and Jason Simmons has history with him. They were together in Green Bay, but he's a veteran player. So we just have to make sure that he's in shape, ready to go, learning the system. He's with Tapp, he's with Kerrigan, so I have high anticipation that he will learn the system very quickly, and then when we get him involved as whenever he's ready.
Yeah, they played with Ryan Kerrigan when Kerrigan still was playing here. Kerrigan was with the team, I believe, through the first year that they were the Washington football team, so that would have been 2020, and then played 1 year with Philadelphia and has been here as an assistant coach for the last few years. So here's a very interesting stat that Nikki Jabala had last night. She wrote, a milestone is in reach for Deebo Samuel this weekend. He needs 87 receiving yards to join Hall of Famers Bobby Mitchell and Charlie Taylor as the only players in NFL history with at least 5,000 receiving yards and 1,000 rushing yards in their first 7 seasons. Now, if you'd have asked me to guess who Deebo Samuel would join as being only the third player to get those numbers in the first 7 seasons, I never would have guessed them for a couple of reasons. One, when those guys came in, they played their whole careers, really. I think Charlie, maybe in his last year, played 16 games. But they were 14-game seasons. And when Bobby Mitchell came in, they were 12-game seasons, 12 games. So the seasons were shorter. On top of that, teams throw the ball so much more than they used to. And I would have thought, along the way, there would be other players who would – Christian McCaffrey, you would think, in his first set. Of course, he's hurt all the time, so maybe that has something to do with it. But, it's such a passing league now that you would think that in 7 seasons there would be a number of guys who would have 5,000 receiving yards and 1,000 rushing yards in their first 7 seasons. And it's stunning that it's not. But on the other hand, when you think of it this way, those were 2 very interesting players, both of them in the Hall of Fame, both of them great players. I think Charlie Taylor is underrated, and I would like to see Charlie Taylor, who passed away a couple of years ago, I would like to see 42 retired pretty soon. I think that should be the next number retired. Maybe it's going to be John Riggins. Maybe they'll work that out for next year or maybe down the road for this year. I don't know. But Charlie Taylor was a great player, and Bobby Mitchell was historic. He was the first African-American player to play for the Redskins. And both of them started out as running backs. Charlie Taylor was drafted out of Arizona State by the Redskins in 1964 as a running back. And he got hurt a lot. And they looked at his speed and his receiving skills. And let's turn him into a wide receiver. Well, a couple of years before that, they had done the same thing with Bobby Mitchell. Bobby Mitchell had played with Jim Brown in Cleveland. And you would think, well, Jim Brown, how many carries is he going to get? Well, in those days, teams had split backfields. They played 2 backs. And although he's maybe the greatest football player who ever played and certainly one of the greatest running backs, if not the greatest running back ever in Jim Brown was a fullback and Bobby Mitchell was a halfback. And teams would routinely hand off to either of them and gain big yardage. Like when Larry Brown was playing here in the 1970s. He was a great player. MVP of the league, 1972. They had Charlie Haraway, who was a fullback but carried the ball a lot. Like for a season, Larry Brown might get 1,000 yards, but Haraway might get 400 or 500. He wasn't just a blocking back. That's the way they did it that year. So it kind of makes sense with both Bobby Mitchell and Charlie Taylor ringing up those numbers, and then Deebo Samuel, who's used as a dual threat, both as a runner and a pass receiver now, needs 87 yards to join them as the only players in NFL history with at least 5,000 receiving yards and 1,000 rushing yards in 7 seasons. Sadly, they're both gone. Bobby Mitchell's number is retired. It was the second number ever retired by the franchise. Should have been retired a long time ago. Should not have had to go through the disgrace of Steve Spurrier giving it out to a backup tight end named Leonard Stevens in 2002. But it is what it is, and Bobby Mitchell has passed away, so has Charlie Taylor. Mitchell's number is retired, and Taylor's number should be retired as well. So that's interesting. Anyway, Deebo now doing a podcast, and last week he had on Terry McLaurin, and the other day, yesterday I guess, he had on Zach Ertz. And Zach Ertz told the story of how he came to Washington before last season.
A few years back, I was in Arizona. It was a tough end to my career in Arizona. And so I wanted to get back with Kliff when I saw he was the OC here. I didn't really know DQ at the time, didn't really know who the quarterback situation was. But I had loved playing for Kliff when I was in Arizona. So when I had the opportunity to come here and play for him, someone that has believed in me wholeheartedly from the moment that I got with him, it was a no-brainer. And then we drafted Jayden. Being here with DQ has just far surpassed every expectation I had coming here. And I've loved every bit of it.
For sure. As you mentioned, you played with Kliff in Arizona. Did he recruit you here? And what does Kliff bring to this offense?
Yeah, Kliff is the offense. So the offense is how he wants it. It's his system. It's his scheme. I feel like he has a lot of autonomy to kind of do what he wants. DQ isn't micromanaging anyone in this building, which I'm sure the coaches love. And yeah, he definitely recruited me here. We had some success in Arizona together. He knew my skill set. He thought I could add value to this team, this organization. So yeah, he was a big part of the reason I came here, and we definitely had our conversations before I signed.
And I don't think even Kliff Kingsbury could have imagined that he would be this productive. That he's become sort of the favorite short yardage target of Jayden Daniels. And one of the reasons they did bring him in here is that they did want a tight end who they knew would run precise routes, someone that Jayden Daniels could always rely on being in the place that he was supposed to be. And it's worked out better than I think anybody could have imagined. Part 2 from Zach Ertz, and this is something I've heard him say before, but this is about how he looks at Jayden Daniels and the comparison he sees with his college quarterback, Andrew Luck.
I played with Andrew in college, played with Jayden obviously now currently, and they're probably the most talented players I've played with. Andrew in college was insane playing with him. But he was so good, but it was never about him. He would never want any of the credit. If the TVs were showing him in the locker room, he'd go up to the television, turn the TV off because he didn't want it ever to be about him. And I feel like Jay is similar in that regard. He's super, super talented. You don't get drafted number 2 overall, win the Heisman without that. But he's just so humble, one of the guys, and dog competitors.
Yeah, for sure. Definitely a dog.
And so it's never about them. And they just want to be one of the guys. They care about people, and they exhaust themselves in the process. So I've loved playing for Jayden since the moment he got here.
For sure. Let's talk the loss to the Packers.
Oh, great.
Does the team live up to the hype? I can kind of start off. Early on in the week, DQ was talking about how fast their defense was, like, flying to the ball, like the pass rush, this, that, and the third. I wouldn't say it's kind of live up to the hype. I think it's just kind of like the standard LaFleur is trying to build over there. They came out flying. In the offensive aspect, you like to get going early, like little dinks and dunks, just to settle Jay down, in my opinion, just a little bit, and just to get the flow of the game rolling, of like how Kliff like to call the plays and how we like to get rolling. But I think their defense was pretty good. I thought their defense was pretty good.
Yeah, I mean, they're obviously very talented. They're extremely well coached. I got a lot of respect for that D coordinator. And I talked about it prior to the game. The one thing you don't want to do is get behind to them early and become one-dimensional, because the pass rushers with Micah and the rest of the guys are just too good, too talented to just live in that situation. And unfortunately, that's exactly what happened to us. We got down early and it became one-dimensional. And so for us, we just had a bad day. I wouldn't put too much stock into our performance. I don't think anyone's over here in the panic button, like what happened to us. It's a long season. We want to continue to improve as the season goes on. But they definitely were the better team that night.
For sure. We know we got the Raiders coming in this weekend. I kind of watched them a little bit last night. What challenges do you think they pose, and how do you feel about Brock Bowers and Ashton Jeanty?
I mean, I don't know a lot about Ashton Jeanty, obviously. I was asleep last night for that game. When it comes on at 10 p.m. Eastern, I'm going to miss that one. But Brock is a phenomenal player. What he did last year was incredible. To come into the league as obviously a high draft pick and put up the numbers he did was phenomenal. And the Raiders, with Pete, they're going to be extremely well coached. They're fast defensively. They fly around. Max, probably top 2, top 1, top 3 pass rushers in the league. Relentless effort. He's always going to fly around. He sets the tone for that whole building. And so, yeah, they're going to be well coached. They're going to play fast. They're going to play hard. It's going to be a tough game for us, honestly.
That's Zach Ertz on the podcast that's now hosted by Debo Samuels, called Cleats and Convos. He had Terry McLaurin last week, Zach Ertz this week, and Ertz going to be a big part of the game plan here. They're going to face that pass rush from Max Crosby, and it's going to be whether it's going to be Jayden Daniels, and I don't think it's going to be him. I think it's going to be Marcus Mariota. You got to get rid of the football quickly, and I would expect if they're going to win the game, it's going to be a big game for Zach Ertz, who's been everything and more since coming here at the beginning of last year. Remember this, and he talked about the Arizona situation. This was the 2023 season, and they had fired Kingsbury, and they got rid of Ertz about midseason. Nobody picked him up. I mean, the way he's played the last 2 years, it's hard to get your head around that, but he doesn't get picked up. Finally, the Lions get him because they've had some injuries, and it's not long before they play the 49ers in the NFC Championship game. And Ertz was not active for that, but had they made the Super Bowl, then Ertz would have been active, and who knows how he would have played. Some more football yak. Booger McFarland is I think always good when he's on PTI, and he covered both college and pro yesterday, starting with the NFL.
Booger, we entered this season hearing a whole lot of hype, a whole lot of promise about the Steelers' defense and how great it was going to be. What are you seeing so far through 2 games?
Not a lot. I mean, that's the thing about it. Like, you heard a lot about this Steelers team, and they got Watt, they got Hayward, they got Bosa, they got Ramsey. I mean, you just start naming off all these guys with these accolades. But funny thing about football is not played on paper. You actually got to go out there and strap up. And those guys that I named, they haven't been performing. Now, I have hope that Mike Tomlin, who is a tremendous coach, he's a Hall of Fame, first ballot Hall of Fame coach, he's going to get it fixed. But they're the highest paid defense in football. Let that set in. There's more money on that defense than any other defense in football. And right now they're not playing that way. They got to get their stars, their big name players to play that way. And there's no doubt in my mind, Mike Tomlin will get it done.
I will transition to college football for a second. I'm trying to figure out, Booger, what to make of this weekend's games. There's some nice matchups, but not the ones you can hype and say it's the greatest weekend of all time. So what are you looking forward to this weekend specifically out of these games?
By the way, Mike, I'm sorry about what happened to your Northwestern Wildcats last weekend. I was waiting on that text from you. I didn't get it. That's number one. Number two, let's move forward to this weekend, okay? I'm going to stay in the same conference. I'm going to be right there in the Big Ten. And I think the Illinois-Indiana game, to me, is going to be outstanding. I'm a big believer of identity. I love teams that know who they are. And Illinois and Brett Bielema, they understand who they are. They're a physical team. Their running backs have 90 carries on the season. Their quarterback only has 78 throws. That tells you what kind of team they want to be. They want to be physical. They want to control the line of scrimmage. They want to run the football. And they're going up against this Indiana team led by this guy who's the head coach, Kurt Signetti. He's a little cocky. He's a little ornery. And he's got this quarterback named Fernando Mendoza. And I think he's going to try to put up a ton of points. That game really intrigues me because much like the big prize fight that we saw this weekend between Crawford and Canelo, styles make fights. And so now you have the rugged Illinois team that wants to run the football, and you got Indiana that wants to kind of chunk it around a lot. I can't wait to see how this thing plays out.
Booker, same here. And I know my bias. I'm looking at these two teams I usually root against, but I'm interested in this game. My follow-up question is, can either one of them emerge and sustain this and be a factor down the stretch as we start moving to playoff talk?
I don't think they can, just because if you look at the Big Ten, it's going to be top heavy. You got Ohio State, Penn State, Oregon. Like, those are the 3 teams at the top. If there's going to be a 4th team, maybe Illinois, and if Indiana can win this game, maybe it's Indiana. But I do think those 3 at the top of the Big Ten right now are a step above everybody else.
We're going to stay in college football and get you out on this question. Yesterday on this show, I didn't say that Dabo Swinney was on the hot seat because Billy Napier's on the hot seat, but I said he was on the warm seat. I watched what he said and all of that, and I said he was on the warm seat. How do you see it?
Well, I'm going to put it right in you guys' wheelhouse. Like, you guys have won Emmy after Emmy after Emmy. You might not win it every year, but you've won enough. Like, Dabo's won a lot. He might not win every year, but he's won enough. How would you guys feel if somebody said you guys were on the warm seat, Tony? Like, nobody's putting Tony and Michael Wilbon on the warm seat. So why are we trying to put Dabo on the warm seat? Like, Dabo has done enough. Now, it's not good right now, and he knows that. But if you look at Dabo's resume, it's been very successful. I think people in Clemson, especially Clemson fans, they get a little spoiled. They want to win a national championship every year because of what Nick Saban did and the success that Kirby Smart's having right now. But the success that Clemson has had, there's probably 100 programs around America, one named Northwestern, that would take that success. So let's back Dabo off the hot seat just a little bit, gentlemen.
That's Booger McFarland yesterday on PTI. If you missed the Dabo comments, this was Tuesday, and they're 1-2 on the year. That's not Clemson football. That's not what you pay a coach $10 million a year to do. slow to embrace the NIL. He was slow to embrace the transfer portal. He's in on both of them, as you have to be now. But you got to win. If you got to win more than that. Nick Saban didn't have seasons like that. And so Dabo, who was smart enough not to take the Alabama job when Saban retired, he left that to Kalen DeBoer, and he's staying at Clemson. But this is what he's saying to his critics.
Hey, listen, I mean, if Clemson's tired of winning, they can send me on my way, but I'm going to go somewhere else and coach. I ain't going to the beach. Hell, I'm 55. I got a long way to go. Y'all going to have to deal with me for a while. I got a long way to go. I'm just getting going. I'm just now good enough to be a head coach. I'm just now figuring it out. So we'll be around a while.
No, he's got to figure out how to get the quarterbacks and the top skilled players in and pay the money. Now I'm sure they got boosters, but I don't think that Clemson has money like Texas does, like Alabama doesn't even have that kind of money because they'd be buying out Kalen DeBoer now, like Notre Dame does. I mean, the boosters are as Wilbon said the other day. He said he's a booster at Northwestern. He says we're stupid. He said we sit around and we figure out how to pay these coaches and bring guys in. They're already paying him, and they're paying him a lot of money, and they're paying him to have a better record than this. And no question about his record. 2 national championships. That's great stuff. He's made Clemson into a major program in a conference where, let's face it, you really can't lose a conference game. This isn't competing in the Big Ten. It's not competing in the SEC. It's the ACC. And if you don't have a year where you're maybe one conference loss, that's about all you can afford in the ACC and still be really, thinking about competing for the national championship, then how many seasons can you do like that? And how many more years before they run them out? They may be sorry they did it. And, Clemson may never find another coach like Dabo Swinney again, but Dabo Swinney in this era, now he says now I'm just starting to figure it out. He may be just starting to figure out the new way of college football, the new way that, the Kurt Cignetti way, where you look at the transfer portal and you bring guys in, and they looked awesome last week. In fact, Indiana's got the as Booker just said, the game of the weekend where they're hosting Illinois tomorrow night. But that's where Dabo is, and Dabo in 2025 is a lot different than Dabo in 2018. The game of college football, the way it's played, not as much on the field, but off the field, it's completely different. And some have adjusted, and some, like Nick Saban, said, nah, I've had enough. I'm in my 70s. I got enough national championships. I love coaching, but this isn't what I signed up for. This isn't the sport that I coached for many, many years. And as he said, they were having a kind of a freshman orientation barbecue at his house, and his wife said to him, all these guys are interested in is how much money they're going to be paid. And I'm not so sure that that's what you're doing at this stage of the game for anyway. And I understand where he's coming from. At his age, done it, been there, done that. You only got to do it if you enjoy it. And he reached the point where he wasn't anymore, and he's doing great in television. Man, Nick Saban is really good on TV. All right, coming up, I got Ravens preview as they play on Monday night, once again in prime time, second time in 3 weeks. They open up the season on Sunday Night Football in Buffalo. Now they are home against the Detroit Lions on Monday, and we'll take a look at that and more as we continue. It's the Andy Pollin Show, ESPN 630.